Hey everyone, welcome. Welcome in. We're going to give it a few minutes for folks to get started. Thanks for joining our monthly meeting today. We're really looking forward to hearing from our guest speaker about school site councils and learning more about that. I'm also personally really excited about it because I don't know that much about it. So I'm looking forward to learning more. And then we'll be joined by Dr. Sue, or Superintendent Sue, for updates and questions. So thank you so much again for joining. Like I said, we'll give it a couple minutes for folks to join. As you're joining in the room, please feel free to let us know a little bit about you and who you are. Just, you can give us the school, like your child's school and the grade of your kids. And maybe just tell us like one thing that you really love about your school.
Well, I'll go ahead if nobody else is jumping in. My name is Renee. I have a son at Lincoln Middle School. One thing I love about Lincoln is that the principal is always quick to communicate and gives me information that I ask for when I need it. I also work with a group of people who are parents and guardians and people who care about SF students. We help families navigate the resources, city and community resources.
Well, thank you so much, Renee, for sharing. Yeah, and everybody just feel free, please to put it in the chat. As we're just getting ready, we have probably another minute, so we'll probably start our content. But we would love to just, if you're not speaking, we'll keep you guys. We'll let you unmute when it's Q&A time. But until then, please mute yourselves and then feel free to just share in the chat what school you're at, kids' grades, and one thing that you love about your school. And then also, as you guys are doing that, I just want to let you know that we are recording today. And if you need translation services, in your toolbar along the bottom of the screen, well, it's along the top for me right now, but along the bottom of your screen, you should be able to take a look at more options and get some closed caption translation services. And if you need any help with anything like that, just drop it in the chat. I have my peers, Lila and Nicole. I can't tell if Giovanna's in here as well, but we have our team at SF Parents is here in the chat and keeping an eye out for things in the chat. So if you need any help, feel free to ask for it there. So let's see. All right, it's 12:03. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So my name is Jerry Deanda. I am a community organizer here at San Francisco Parent Coalition. I've been with the organization for about 6 months, and my job is to help parents in SFUSD empower themselves so that we can always work towards keeping our kids first and making decisions that help our kids succeed across all walks of life so that every child in our city has access to an equitable and excellent education. And we do center the voices and needs of the community and aspirations of our students and families. And we make sure that we are staying curious about different perspectives and we listen and lift up what we hear. And especially in meetings like this, we want to make sure that we allow for understanding as people are sharing and letting people process before continuing to share, or we'd like to avoid people jumping over one another. So I think with those norms in mind, our organization, we do have a very diverse and strong network of SFUSD families, and we have been in existence since early 2020 during COVID times is when this organization sort of was born out of that whole situation we lived through. And then we're all, again, advocating for excellence and equity and achieving wins for kids. There's always work to do in the district, but we have had a lot of wins to date, especially around literacy, updating outdated literacy programs, offering additional math interventions, and as the closures happened last fall, that the debacle and the shuttered process for that, we were able to advocate so that there was an opportunity ticket so that kids and families who were impacted by school closures could have a say and preference into where they wanted to be continuing their education in SFUSD. So we do make sure that we're always, again, keeping our parents and kids in mind as we move our work forward. And to that point, we have a few campaigns that we're working on right now. We have some key campaigns that we always have active. We have an SFUSD budget campaign, and the goal of that campaign is to make sure that the dollars that we are spending, that we're paying our tax dollars into, we keep it as close to students as possible to ensure better outcomes for everyone. And then we want to make sure that there's greater transparency and accountability and accessibility. And we want to regain local control and maintain local control and avoid state takeover. We also have our San Francisco Kids Can't Wait campaign, which is centered completely around literacy, both reading and math. And a lot of great things are coming out of that. We are doing a spring pilot of read to lead workshops where we're going out into the community and meeting with parents and creating parent leaders to advocate and engage with their kids and help them understand how what they can do at home really can translate to better outcomes for their kids. And then we have our I Love My Public Schools campaign, which is all about helping improve enrollment and the and PR for SFUSD to make sure that we continue to see a thriving school district. And these are our mission and vision and values and equity statement. And so I've gone sort of over all these things a little bit here already, so I won't belabor it, but we do see a vision for San Francisco, and it's one that I believe a lot of us share. We want San Francisco to be an amazing, thriving city where all of our kids, again, no matter where they're coming from, whatever their backgrounds are, whatever neighborhood they're living in, whatever school they're going to, they all have the same access. And we really want to connect and empower parents, because the only way that we can achieve that vision is if we have the parent power. All right, so I'm going to turn it over now to Rex Ridgway, who is joining us today. Rex, thank you so much again for your time. And he is going to talk to us about parent leadership and school site councils.
Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. I feel at home because there's a lot of people on the chat, on the Zoom that I know. It takes a little bit of the nervousness away. Susan, hi, Susan, Renee, Jeff Lucas, Tina Paul, Lila, Stephanie, Courtney, Mr. Patrick Wolf, and Lawrence Lee, all good friends of mine. So I'm glad you guys are here. So I feel like I have to bring it now because you guys know me personally. So at any rate, let me start by my background. So I started as a full-time volunteer at El Dorado Elementary School when my granddaughter started in the kindergarten. And the first thing I asked the teachers there, well, what should I get involved with? And this was in 2012. And every teacher I talked to said, get on the school site council. Of course, I didn't even know what it was. All I knew is there's a PTSA. So I jumped on the school site council and I jumped on the PTSA. And I've been on every school site council that my granddaughter has gone through, middle school and here at Lincoln High School. I'm co-chair of the school site council. One of the things that people don't understand is that the school site council is required by law. Just like the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee is required by law. PTSA is not required by law. You should have one, but if you don't, it's not required by law, as opposed to school site council. And why is that? That's because monies come from Sacramento based on the average daily attendance of how the schools are funded. And every public school in the state of California must have a school site council. School site council should have 10 members at elementary and middle school levels. At the high school level, should have 12 members. Okay, so yeah, thank you for going to that slide. So as you can see, the different school organizations. So the highlighted one in the bold, school site council. And the key thing with the school site council is that it has power. And that is, it votes on the budget. every year a preliminary budget goes from 555 Franklin, if you will, to all the school sites. And then the school site council will look at the preliminary budget, have a meeting, chop it up, dice it, slice it, talk about the needs of the school, send it back to headquarters. Then they will do their own adjustments and then send it back. So there's a back and forth twice, and then it's finally approved. And then they all go inside. I'll say a box, if you will, with a red ribbon, and it's sent to Sacramento. And then that's where Sacramento will look at the entire budget of the district, and then they may send it back with revisions or what have you. I won't go that far. So I'll tell you a fun fact. When I started on the school site council in 2012, the principal put aside $20,000 of that elementary school's school site budget for hiring a consultant to help her learn how to be a principal. And I just thought, this is crazy. Why should she, pay $20,000 out of the school's budget to help her learn how to do her job? So the next year, when she tried to do it again, I was chair of the school site council, and I had enough background now and experience that I actually had a majority vote to vote that down, and that we took that $20,000 that she wanted to hire a consultant and brought it in for the kids and the academic materials and stuff like that. I didn't know exactly what we did with it, but it definitely didn't go to a stranger who was helping the principal learn how to be a principal. When we also had an assistant principal, it didn't make sense. So that's why the school site council gives the community, the parents, teachers, power on how monies are spent at a school site. Okay, the one thing that before we go to the next slide is that the school site council runs just like the Board of Education or the Board of Supervisors at City Hall. That is, it has to be posted. When we have a school site council meeting on a Wednesday, we have to follow the Brown Act. We have to post the agenda of the school site council 72 hours before the meeting, just like the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee has to do that. Board of Supervisors at City Hall has to do that. Of course, our Board of Education has to do that. So it follows the Brown Act. Number two, the school site council is governed by the bylaws. So the bylaws tells if there's any questions of what's going on or what needs to be done, you always refer to the bylaws. Just like the city has the charter, the United States has the Constitution. You follow the governing document, and that's the bylaws. The bylaws are looked at and tweaked or adjusted or what have you at the beginning of each year, and in the bylaws you choose your leaders. You have to have a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. You don't have to have a treasurer, like the PTSA must have a treasurer. The school site council, you do not have to have a treasurer, okay? Because the money, you don't have to go out and raise money and chaperone the money and set up a bank account, obviously, because the money comes from outside sources, okay? Next slide. Okay, one of the things that why the school site council is so important is that when that school site submits its budget, connected to that budget is a document called the School Plan for Student Achievement. And that's where the real work goes in. It's work to look at the budget, and you see the line items and what have you, and you see where the money came from. As an example, fun fact, last year, the state of California sued that company called, that made those Vipers, where the kids would buy, and the name of the company was JUUL. And 23, I think it was $23 million in settlement money flowed into the schools, school districts. Lincoln, where I'm at Lincoln, we got $583,000 of that settlement. Lowell High School, I know they got $785,000. So that's a line item that goes on the school site budget. So when you guys look at your school site budget, you'll see where all this money is coming from. The other thing that's actually harder to do or takes more digging in is with the slide that we're looking at right now, the School Plan for Student Achievement. And what happens here is how you're reporting to the district exactly how your school site is going to bring to the students how they're going to basically be better. Uh, uh, Achievement was reading, math, et cetera, et cetera. Like a school like Lincoln, we have 2,000 kids. And of course, with that broad thing, we break it down by race and ethnicity. We break it down by, we have a few kids that are homeless. We have foster kids. We have a good percentage of SPED kids. So when we create this plan, the school plan for student achievement, we actually go into writing and we write exactly how we're going to make sure all of our kids are successful. And that's, this SP, it drives the budget, because the budget, certain things you can't do with the budget. You can't cut out certain things like, SPED is protected. Core teachers are protected, like an AP calculus teacher is protected, as an example. But then there's other things that you have to deal with. As an example, Lincoln. 3 years ago, Lincoln had 3 parent liaisons. We had one for Latinx kids, one for Asian kids, and one for African American kids. Well, the budget got cut, as we know, after COVID, and we had to scale back because Lincoln is about 80% Asian kids. We kept the Asian parent liaison, and we let go the Latinx and African American liaison. And these are just certain things you just have to do as the school site council looks at what to do about how do we provide the necessary help to make sure that the money at a school site is delivered to making sure that the kids in these schools, no matter where they fall, whether it's foster kids, SPED kids, African American kids, whatever, are given the best shot of the use of that money. Next slide. Okay, so you see the 2 circles here. The one March 8th, that's coming up in about 3 weeks. And at this district, there's two summits. One is in person, that's every October, and we all meet at a certain school site. I think this year was at McConnell, I believe, or Everett, can't remember. But and that's where all the school site councils, leadership, and members meet at the school site at the location. And Superintendent Maria Sue is there, as well as the leaders at 555 Franklin. We have breakout rooms, and we really get into just making sure that all the leaders of the school site councils are up to speed on what to do, questions, making sure that their school sites are populated correctly, et cetera, et cetera. And then the next one, which is March 8th, is the second one. And now that one is done via Zoom. And that's because all school sites should have their budgets by then. Now, this year, there's a delay. Our principal told us that we would, at Lincoln, and I'm assuming this is across the board, that school sites will have their budgets on the 19th of February. So because of that, we're going to have our next school site council meeting the first week of March, before the 8th. And that will give our principal and the admin. So when you guys hear the word admin, that just means the principal and vice principals. At Lincoln, we have 3 vice principals. There's 4 of them will get together and go through the budget, and then there will be shared with the school site council when we meet. So if anybody's received their budget, I would like to know. But my understanding is that all school sites will receive their budget in December. I'm sorry, February 19th. February 19th. Okay, then the second one is April 1st. The first draft of the school plan for school success is due. And that's the document I was referring to. So go back to the previous slide for me. The one before that, the one before, go back to.
I think I have to stop sharing for a sec. Hang on. Sorry, Rex, give me a sec here.
Okay.
You want to go back to the SIPSA slide, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Okay, that's it right there.
Perfect.
Okay, so every school website, you should be able to find this document. So of course, we have the regular main website, but if you go to your school, will have this document or should have it, and that's required. So when a school site council finishes going through all the data and putting together the school plan for success, school plan for student achievement, this document in ours is sort of like, I think ours is like 25, 30 pages long. It goes into breakdown of absenteeism. It talks about what kids are taking AP courses. We're a high school course, so we have AP courses. And we see with certain kids, focal group or ethnicity are not taking AP classes. We see the chronic absences of certain focal groups, and we address all that in this plan. So every school, if you go to that website, you should see that plan, your plan for your school. Okay, and every year at the beginning of the year, that's the first thing. The two things that a school site council should do at the beginning of the year is tweak the bylaws, vote on who's going to lead the school site council, and these are 2-year terms. For example, I'm at Lincoln and I'm terming out. This is my second year as chair. Well, I'm co-chair, but second year, so I'll be terming out, and it's a 2-year term for your chair, vice chair, and your secretary. Okay, so the other thing is to look over last year's. So at the beginning of this year, what we did at Lincoln, we looked at last year's, and then we took September, October, November of this year, because we didn't meet in December. We took the first 3 months, September, October, November, and we actually took last year's school plan for student achievement and just dived into it and see where we should enhance a certain area, what we did we achieve what we wanted to do last year, et cetera, et cetera. Because again, when we send in the budget, when the school site sends in the budget, they also have to send in this plan. So it's not just the budget, it's the budget and A&D, this plan. And so again, you can go to your school site website and you should be able to see that. Okay, next slide. I'll go back to the next slide, please.
Yeah, no worries. Do you want me to go to the timeline or do you want me to go ahead? And I also want to just let you know, because I know you wanted to leave time for questions for folks
Yeah,
to ask
okay,
you.
you know what? That's right. Okay,
So
let's go to the next slide. Let's go to
Okay,
the next slide.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks for keeping me on track here.
No, yeah, no worries. I just know it was important to you to let people be able to ask questions, so I wanted to make sure.
Okay, yeah, okay, best practices for your school site. Here's one of the best practices that your PTSAs should be a source of parent involvement because that's where the parents are. Most parents don't even know about the school site council. That's where you can get your parents. At Lincoln, we have 16 members of our school site council, and 6 of the members are students. So we have, we're like the poster child of a school site council. But some school site councils don't, but that's what you want to strive for. 10 members, and half has to be teachers, half has to be parents or the community. Let's see, listen to, okay, next slide. Okay, so I'll close here for questions, guys. Definitely before the superintendent comes, I want to answer questions that you guys have. Okay, so we hold elections, that's in the fall. Parent surveys, in some cases, a school would do a family survey. The winter, execute, analyze the parent survey, review, and revise the SFUSD, which we do again before December. Review the budget. We look at last year's budget, but we don't really get into that until January or in this case February 19th. And then the spring, some schools have a retreat, community meetings, and then you just dig in because in March and April, that's where it goes to headquarters and then back. And then we vote on it and we send it in and we're done. So usually at the end of the year is really April. There's nothing happening in May. There may be, unless there's some loose ends. So you basically are wrapping up in April. Okay, questions and answers. I hope I stimulated them and I'll answer them the best I can. Okay.
I definitely, I mean, actually, I'll kick it off as well. We have Lila, and if you're looking and seeing any questions for Rex, just go ahead and lift them up. But I mean, I'll kick it off. Like, you know, you were saying some, like, how do you get that parent participation? How do you, like, what have been your, I mean, you've been also on these school site councils at all levels of school, right? So from, you know, an elementary to middle to high school. And like you said, the high school situation that you're in right now at Lincoln is sort of like the poster child. Well, like, what if we're not the poster child? Or how do we get, like, what are your steps to help try to make, to get to the poster child or like ideal level?
Yeah, great question, because that has not always been the case in my journey. In the elementary school, it's easier because most parents hang around the kids. You know, they don't want to, you know, you have many kids, you know, field trips, all the parents show up because they're kids. You know, they haven't weaned off of them yet. So it's easier to get parents to involve in the school site council. And the way you do that is through the principal, through their weekly bulletins, and through the PTA, because most parents would join the PTA and don't even know about the school site council. At our middle school, we had very poor parent participation, and we really didn't do a good job in getting participation. Then at Lincoln, again, it depends on how you go after. So to answer your question, it really has to be the principal has to get behind recruiting, and the best place to get parents is the PTSA. Then of course there's always the newsletters that go out. So that's pretty much the what I've seen.
Okay. Julia, why don't you go ahead? I see your hand raised.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, great.
This is really helpful. I appreciate it. So West Portal's actually having SSC elections this week. We're kind of late to the game. And I think I'll be joining. One question I have is that I've heard that some SSCs, when they're kind of low capacity, can be kind of rubber stampy for whatever the principal brings to the agenda. So I'm just curious for Rex's advice on how to really have parents on the SSC engage with the material, and so it's not just a rubber stamp for the principal.
That's right, and you're exactly right. If there's no parent participation, or the parents feel like that the principal is the sage of this, it will be rubber stamped. So the best thing that the parents can do is have a strong school site council chair, a president, whatever you want to call the leader, and the parents have to understand that they have the power of the vote. The first thing is the very first thing you have to do is populate your school site council. It's hard to do when you have 2 parents or 3 parents, but it's easier if you have 5 parents or 6 parents, because you have the voice. They're in the room with the principal, and the principal really knows that the school site council has the right to vote, and the majority vote carries it. Again, the best way to populate. There's 2 ways to populate your school site council. The principal has to be involved in populating, and sometimes the principal won't do it because they know the power of being able to just rubber stamp stuff. The PTSA is another source of getting parents to understand there's a school site council, how important it is, and if you can just comb out 3 or 4 of the parents to join, that's the way to do it. But thank you for bringing that up, because we see that at a lot of schools. And again, if no parents are involved in the school site council, they still have a school site council because it's law that they have it. And you know who's going to run it? The principal.
That's super helpful to know. Thank you, Rex.
Hi, Rex. Thank you for being here. I do see a couple of questions in the chat, and I believe more than one people have the same question regarding if can people other than parents or who are staff within a school site, i.e. like community members, be part or be on the SSC?
Yes, absolutely. It can be someone who's not even in the school and don't even have a kid in the school. and lives around the corner, if you will. They can be on the school site council. Absolutely. It can be a nurse. It can be a counselor. It doesn't have to be a teacher. It can be anybody in the community.
Thanks, Rex.
And now, and another thing that we've done at Lincoln, we've invited other people to actually be guest speakers. We've invited Melgam, two of the supervisors from City Hall to be guest speakers. We've invited the chair of the CAC to be a guest speaker, to just get different voices. Renee, who spoke earlier when we got started, she is working with a group of parents on community issues with the schools, and she's been a guest speaker. So that's one of the other things that we do. We reach out beyond the school to get more insight from different people. But yeah, the answer is you don't have to stay within the teachers thing. It's anybody in the community, inside that building or around the corner.
Thank you so much. Well, we're at 12:31 and I know Superintendent Sue has joined us. So Rex, I'm just so grateful for your time. I'm so glad that I was able to finally meet the legendary Rex Ridgway. And I will drop Rex's information in the chat for you all. He's very gracious and welcomes you reaching out to him if you have any additional questions. Thank you so much, Rex.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Superintendent Sue, if you're ready to go, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. That's not fair to follow the amazing Rex
Sorry.
way. Like, oh my gosh, that's going to be hard. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see you all again. I definitely see some familiar faces. I think I saw a couple of you last night at LCAP. So it's nice to see you literally again. And thank you for having me. And I know that, one of these days we're just going to I'm going to come to one of your meetings and we're going to talk about all the wonderful things that we're doing in our schools. And we'll get to brainstorm and live in the dreaming and unicorns and all the wonderful things that our children deserve space. But today, right now, in this moment in time, is not that. It's to share with you some really tough news, and hopefully to gather some of your thoughts on how clearly we need to we have to do a better job at sharing these tough news. But I appreciate the space, and I believe you all have my PowerPoint. If you want, I can manage and run my slides. I don't know what you guys want me to do.
Sure. Let me just go ahead and make you a co-host, and then that should give you the ability to share your slides. And if you have any troubles with that, just let me know.
Great. Okay. So you all have seen hold shift to select desktop.
If we have them, Jerry, then we could pull them up and share them for her.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's weird where everything is just like it's an empty space. It's not.
Just give us a second, Superintendent.
Yeah, I don't have them in my email, but you just want me to get them from, are they the published slides?
There's published slides.
Okay.
And sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. I just need a second to get them.
So let me see.
I'm sure someone here has the link handy.
Good afternoon,
That would be
everyone.
helpful.
This is Hung Mei. I can help drive the slides if you make me co-host.
Great.
Sure. Okay, let's try to make that work. All right, you should have ability right now, Hung Mei.
Okay, I just clicked a whole bunch of things.
Yay. Yes. See, this is it. This is how a team works. Thank you so much, Hung Mei. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Okay. Okay. So once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you all. For those of you who were at the board meeting last night on Tuesday, this is a similar slide with some changes in in title pages and some corrections in the calculations. But just once again, just reiterate that it is a very difficult moment in our school district right now. We do have to make some tough decisions. There is a path at the end of this. There is a big vision at the end of this where our schools are going to be stable. Teachers and educators and staff will have a level of predictability that they need and quite frankly deserve, because that level of predictability will then translate to the security and predictability that our students and families deserve. So I just want us to just have that in our minds as we go through these slides. Next slide, please. So it's just that. I'm going to share with you some preliminary budget numbers, and I just want to reiterate that this is where we are now. And what I neglected to share on Tuesday is that what we're going to share today right now are just the unrestricted general fund side of the house. We still have some more analysis to do on the restricted side of the house, and then share some high level thinking around the school staffing model and how it connects with budget, and then just outline all the other factors that impact our budget. Next slide. So I feel like the next two slides are really what the hell is going on? Why are we here? So the blue line, the blue bars are just the revenues that we have, once again, in unrestricted general fund. And the yellow bars are these one-time dollars that we have been carrying over the years. So these are called fund balance. So these are dollars that were allocated to us. We didn't spend it, so it just gets carried over for the following year. The one thing that people keep, they ask me, where did these big bumps come from? Where did these numbers come from? The majority of these came from COVID. So during COVID, we got a very large allocation of COVID response dollars, COVID learning loss dollars that we were not able to fully expend. And so that's why you're seeing these big bumps, the big yellow bars. However, our district has continued to increase our expenditures. And as a result, what you're seeing is that as our expenditures increase, our children enrollment has not increased, which is where the blue bars are. And what we end up doing is tapping into these one-time funds to cover the gap of expenses and revenue. And if we don't do anything to mitigate and bring the lines of the expenses closer to the line of the revenue in fiscal year 26, in fiscal year 27, right there, we're going to run out of money to cover that gap because we just keep living on one-time funds. Essentially, we're just borrowing this line of credit and we're just going to run out of money because our credit is going to run out. So next slide will show the need for us and the plan for us to the plan for us to adjust that. So we need to reduce our expenditure so that we can bring that expenditure line down so that it gets closer to the revenue line. And unfortunately, 80% of our budget is comprised of staff. And so in order for us to bring our expenditure down, that means that we need to make the reduction in staff. I will note that there is this still projection that we will be tapping into those the fund balance, the one-time funds, so that we can smooth the fiscal cliff. Imagine if we didn't do this and did a direct reduction to get us into that blue bars, it would, in my mind, devastate our system. So instead, we want to smooth out the reduction so that we can have a longer runway to get our red line, the expenditure line, closer into that blue line, the blue bar, the revenue bar. Next slide, please. So the way we're smoothing out this budget cliff is by having the board in December pass a resolution that directs us to start thinking about doing this. We issued our fiscal stabilization plan as part of first interim that states we are going to make some painful cuts for fiscal year 25-26 and a few additional painful cuts in 26-27 to get us to a place where we're bringing down our expenditures to then match our revenue. There are a few unknowns that will impact this budget picture. First is our supplemental early retirement plan, which is a package that we are offering to all SFUSD employees to incentivize them for taking not early retirement, just taking their retirement. Essentially, is to say thank you to all of those very committed employees who have worked with us for many, many years. And for those who have been thinking about retiring in the next year or two, perhaps to retire now so that we can incentivize that, and then they can help us so that we won't have to pay that salary, or we would have to pay a lower salary. Another variable to all of the budget picture are our layoffs. And then the final variable to the budget picture are state and federal budget. And I didn't talk as much about the federal budget, but over the last 2 days, hearing and seeing what's happening on the federal level with the Department of Education, it is now making me even more nervous about our federal budget. So just very quickly, the state budget is where we get our local control funding formula from. So thank you to the SF parents for training parents and other community members on participation in their school site council, because the school site council is where you're going to provide guidance to the schools on how to allocate the funds, so that we can actually deliver on our promise to children and families. But the funds that you're working towards are the monies that's coming from the state. We know that in January, when the governor released his January governor's budget, it showed that the allocation for education across the state was going to be stable. Now, what we didn't know in January was that there was going to be some reductions on the federal level for FEMA funds. And I believe the governor was hoping to tap into FEMA dollars to pay for the wildfire disaster that's happened down in in Southern California. And in particular, the impact it has on the schools and the school community in SoCal. So that's something that we're going to have to worry and monitor in the governor's May revise. The other part that we are closely monitoring are what's going to happen on the federal level. We know that from the federal government, we receive dollars. They're restricted dollars, but they're called title dollars. So they're dollars that gets allocated to the district to serve very targeted, very specific young people in our district, as well as monies that go to us for special education. So we're closely monitoring that. Right now, the amount of money we receive from the federal government is around $50 million. If we do not get those dollars because the federal government doesn't agree with the way we support our all of our students and the way we allow our students and our staff to show up in our schools the way they want to show up in our schools, to allow our teachers to teach the history of how this country was formed within the context of all of our cultural diversity. And if that is something that the federal government feels that they do not want to support school districts on, it will now create a $50 million gap in our budget. So these are all the things that we are considering. It is not something that we are now 100% worried and focused on, because that is a distraction to the real work that we have to do at this moment in time. But I just want to assure everyone I'm keeping that in the back of my mind, and working with our city leaders on making sure that before any of those things happen, we have lots and lots of legal protections to make sure that those resources are protected. Next slide, please. Okay, so many of you have heard already the reduction that we are proposing to make for fiscal year 25-26, which is next school year, is a reduction in our budget of $114 million, $113.8 million. That translates out to around 10% of our total budget. And the reduction will comprise of a couple of budget balancing strategies. The first is that early retirement package that I shared earlier. The second is reduction in central office staff, as well as contracts and other non-FTE services that we do. I will say for central office, we've already we are moving forward with a $20 million reduction of central office staff. Now, that means that we are reducing staff in our areas that are forward school facing. So it's not just only in operations, because quite frankly, if we cut our payroll team anymore, that would probably not be good for making sure that our staff are paid. We are going to continue to cut a little bit into any of the extra operation stuff, like our Department of Technology. We're making some cuts into communications, into our legal department, some reductions into HR and procurement. And so we're making some reductions in those areas. I did ask all of central office to propose a minimum of 20% reductions to the maximum of 100% reductions in certain initiatives and programs that it was great to have before, but we can't afford now. And then last are the staffing reductions. And so staffing reductions will take the form of us restructuring and realigning our school staffing model so that we can then staff our classrooms, fully enroll our classrooms and staff it to our contractual obligations. Next slide, please. Okay, so next slide. You've heard us saying this. Originally, the slide was called Keeping the Lights On, but not calling that now. We're calling it what it is, which is these are our state required allocations to run a school. We need principals, we need clerks, we need teachers, nurses. The AP preps is a contractual requirement. Of course, supplies and materials. We need funding for subs and leaves and transportations, student nutrition, of course, facility services, insurance, etc. These are all our state required allocations that we know we need to have, which is also what we're calling our basic allocations, our basic priorities. Next slide, please. So here's the more complicated slide. So if we know that those are our state required allocations, we have calculated how much that would cost. And that would cost us a total of $802.7 million. So it costs us $802.7 million to fund all of those state required things to make sure that we run our schools. However, on our unrestricted general fund, which once again is the local control funding formula that is connected to our enrollment numbers, we are only allocated at this moment in time $670 million. And in order for us to then fully fund the base, which is the state required allocation, we will have to fully exhaust all of the unrestricted general fund allocation and then tap into other restricted fund sources to make sure that we fully fund the base. Now, the reason why we're showing this $58 million reduction is because normally you're supposed to fund the base using unrestricted general fund. But because we don't have enough unrestricted general fund and we've exhausted all of our unrestricted general fund, it leaves us with the $58 million as a deficit. That doesn't mean that we are not using the rest of our restricted funds. It just means that right now we have a deficit in our unrestricted general fund. And we still have a lot of other things to fund. We know that we need to fund assistant principals and counselors and security aides and social workers and instructional coaches. We know we need to fund that. And we're going to look for the funding for that on our restricted side. This is a shift for a lot of our school sites because normally in previous years, the assistant principals, the counselors, the social workers were all considered part of the base. And it's not because it's not because our CDE advisor is telling us that that is not part of the base. Part of the base is just these things. And so we're still very committed to finding resources to fund these things, but it won't be under the unrestricted general fund side. It will be on the restricted side. Next slide, please. So here's a different way to show that pyramid that we had on Tuesday. So once again, base allocation are in the blue right there. Same positions. We're putting site discretionary funds here is the blue because we know that school sites apply for grants like the Student Success Fund. Those dollars come straight to the school, and we firmly believe that the school should have the discretionary to allocate those dollars. And it's an agreement that we've finally got to with our CDE advisors that starting next fiscal year, school sites will have the autonomy to allocate those grants that come to school sites. The site discretionary funds also include, it goes down to the second one. So the green bars there, I'm sorry, oops, sorry. So the green bars are also funding that are the SLAM CTE programs. Those are also funds that go straight to sites as people. So SLAM are the sports, libraries, arts, and music positions, and CTE is our career tech education positions. So those are also funding that we know are secured because they're restricted, and we've already kind of signed off. We got Elliot to sign off and say, yes, those are monies that we can now allocate into the schools. The school specific resources are the grants that I just talked about, the grants, and then other fundraising that school sites do to support schools. We've got agreements from our CDE advisors that those resources that you all bring in will stay at the school site and will be operated and programmed by the school. This orange box here is focal. Sorry, I need to figure out how to stop the chats from going because it's blocking. Okay, here we go. So the last box here is the focal student allocation, and these are the LCFF, the local control funding formula allocation for focal students. And those dollars will also go to the schools. And that actually is just in terms of extra money. Those are money that goes to the schools, and it's part of the budget that school sites get. Now, on the other side, these are all the additional student services, the VVGG priority allocations, and school-specific resources. At this moment in time, what I'm sharing with you is that all of these additional staffing services will now be funded on the restricted side of the house, and we're still going through with our CDE advisors on making sure that those restricted dollars can be used to support these services. It's just, yeah, we're going to continue to evaluate. We're going to continue to monitor. The budget process is a very long process. It's a very long and sometimes, and well, not sometimes, very confusing. So well, maybe we can go into the next slide, which is the budget, the timeline. I think very important for folks to see is that our SERP, which is the early retirement package, will close on February 21st. Once it closed, we will then go into it, go through it, and then figure out which positions in the SERP package we would have to replace. And then we can calculate how much money, essentially, we will get from the SERP that will then help alleviate the $114 million deficit. While we do that, we know that school sites need their budget. We are very committed to giving school sites their budget, particularly because our SSCs need to have at least some idea of what the budget will look like so that we can then, so that you all can then provide guidance to your principal. We hope and plan, I'm going to knock on wood here, to provide the schools their budget within the next few weeks so that you can have that, so that site leaders can have that. We are in conversations with site leaders now, but we will land on a budget for school sites within the next few weeks. And then school sites would then be able to bring that budget to the SSC, and you all will then do the heavy lifting around, does this make sense? How will this look like and feel like in our schools? The other big thing that's happening in February is that in 2 weeks, on February 25th, we will be presenting 2 resolutions to the board that will authorize us to start issuing layoff notices, preliminary layoff notices to our classified employees and our certificated employees, meaning our teachers and our classified, our other employees. So that's going to be really painful to go through because essentially, you know, this allowance, this resolution is done. Our HR team will then take that resolution and start building out the layoff list. And then the layoff list gets finalized in March. And layoff notices are given. I just want to remind everyone that once again, the budget process is very long. We believe that, you know, layoffs will be notified to folks, and things can change between March 15th and when we have to do final notices in May. And so I ask everyone to just be sensitive and just to know that a lot of people are walking around with this knowledge that they just received a layoff notice, and it's going to be quite painful in our system. But on March 11th, we will be sharing at the Board of Ed our second interim report, which essentially is the second checkup on our budget and how we are doing in terms of living within our means. We will also be sharing our multi-year projection for how we are working towards decreasing that the red line, the expenditure line, going into getting closer to our revenue line. And then, of course, on March 8th, we are going to be hosting that family summit, the school site summit, to support school site councils in terms of building up, developing their budget and learning more about the budget. The other thing I want to note is that in May, once again, the governor will release a May revise. Between now and May, a lot of things can happen, a lot of things can change, but hopefully things stay the same. And honestly, that would be the best case scenario. Things stay the same. And then we will then submit and present a final budget in June. So that's a lot. I'm sorry. But I am, of course, open for any questions.
Yeah, I just also want to be mindful of your time too. So it is 1 o'clock. I don't know if you have a few minutes to stay.
I do.
I mean, there's so many questions,
I
Dr.
do. I know that's what
Zhu.
the chat, the questions are coming up and it was.
I know. Yeah, and they're all really great, mindful questions. So I know Meredith was saying that we can, we can download all the questions in the chat and send them over to you and have your team get back to us. But just in general, I think like what we're seeing a lot of in terms of like the budget is how do we know that the decisions that we're making now in terms of the plan, right? The plan to get us solvent, like the SERP and the layoffs, like how do we know that allows us to continue to meet our like required obligations? And then also how does that, what's the outlook of that, like 3, 5, years down the line?
Yeah, great question. So I've shared my budget reduction principle with folks before of just number one, the cuts have to be as far away from students as possible. Number two, the cuts have to create better operational efficiencies within the entire system. And then number three, well, we have to stay within our legal requirements. So all of the decisions have to be within our agreed upon contractual agreements with our partner, our labor partners. So those are the three guiding principles, knowing that I need to get to this big number. And so, cuts away from students are trying to, we're trying to reduce as many contracts as possible. So we're reviewing all of our contracts and trying to get rid of them. As some of you know, we still have contracts that consultants that's helping us manage the Empower system. I'm working really hard to try to get to a July 1st go live date so that we can reduce all of those consultants, and that translates out to several $1 million. So these are just chipping into it. But of course, I just want to make sure we're not moving into a go live date for frontline unless it's like ready to go live, because we're not going to have another Empower fiasco. So, but that requires us to be really mindful of, how do we continue to monitor these things? So contracts, the SERP is going to give us a lot as well. As some of you may know, when we do layoffs are done through a seniority process. So our most junior employees get laid off first. So these are, so anyways, most junior employees get laid off first. And so with the SERP, it once again says thank you to our most senior employees. Thank you for your service, and thank you for helping us with our budget right now by taking the SERP and allowing us to kind of tackle the staffing reductions on both sides. The other really ridiculous thing that I don't know if Heather's on this call here, but the other most ridiculous thing about layoffs is that there's a whole bumping thing that happens. So what bumping means is that most senior people, if their position is laid off, they get to bump into another position, which then bumps the next person into another position until you get to a point where that person doesn't have any more seniority and that person gets laid off. So it doesn't mean that the layoff to the person is going to actually lay off that person. It's layoff to the position. And so that position gets laid off, and then the person keeps getting bumped to around, and it creates a lot of disruption. I understand. I just don't know how this is a contractual requirement that happens. The organizational efficiencies that we have is around, do we need to have certain projects going? Maybe not right now. Do we have different initiatives that that's sitting in central office right now that is providing a lot of supports to a group of people? But if it's not going to move the needle for student outcomes, then we're not going to continue to fund that. So that's all the operational efficiencies that we're doing. And then, of course, the legal mandates. So I just want to remind everyone, what I'm talking about is $114 million in reductions. Our budget is $1.2 billion. This represents 10% of our budget. So that leads us with 90% of the budget remaining. With 90% of the budget remaining, we should, and we will, move towards those stated student outcome goals that we all support and want to achieve, want to have happen. The staffing reduction equates out to the same percentage, which once again leads us with 90% of our staff that is still going to be here, that is still going to continue to support our students, that's still going to provide that quality of and excellent services that we need. So it's just, I understand that it's extremely painful because, you know, separating with 500, 600 people is very painful. But for the big picture, once we do this, once we get out of this moment in time, we will have a district that is solvent and that will have a healthy reserve so that we can then have the autonomy to then make the San Francisco decisions that reflects the values that we have. Primarily in my interest is so that in 2 years' time, we can have that predictability for our teachers, then have that predictability for our students and families.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know it's hard. And I also really appreciate just personally that you validate that for everyone. I'm going to kick it over actually to one of our parents, Emily, and she's prepped with a question. And I again, thank you again for staying a little bit over so that we can get some more feedback from you. And then I apologize, everybody. It's like there's a lot to process and a lot of questions, but we'll definitely send those on again, like we said. So Emily, go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to be clear, the 2 questions I have, which I'll ask in one question, are collected from a group of members here. So these are not my questions directly, although I share them. And we appreciate you being here, Dr. Sue. So I think our 2 main concerns coming out of the budget subgroup meeting were regarding data and accountability. The pyramid slide was presented to us with no data and no information, which has caused a lot of confusion, many hours of conversation, Facebook communications, et cetera. This is a group, our community is mixed, but there's a lot of savvy people here who understand numbers, and we both would appreciate more data along with any visuals that are helpful to people who maybe are not able to engage with that data. And we want to be able to help you. So if there is data you're missing, this is a community that is attached to many schools, and you should feel like you can reach out to us and say, like, what can you provide us from your school that can be helpful here? So that's more of a statement, I guess, but it's an offer. And I know this is something that's been addressed in the past couple of days. The second one is regarding accountability and deadlines. I noticed today that somebody said in a question that now maybe the site budgets are going to be coming later, and everything comes later. Everything comes days or weeks or months after we are told it's going to come, which makes it very hard for us to organize and respond. We have meetings set up around addressing these budgets at our school sites. So how can the district, especially with a very expensive new comms person, give us deadlines that they can abide by, just like we ask our students to turn their homework in on time? It's like the least we can do as a district. So
I agree. And I take full responsibility for not having accurate data and for not meeting deadlines. Because for those of you who know me from the city side, I pride myself in those things because those are behaviors, those are adult behaviors that will then lead to trust. And if my end goal is to make sure that the community will be able to trust what we say, if we do not have accurate information that we're sharing, if we do not do it in a timely manner, how can people trust us? So I fully hear that. I'm going to just ask for your grace because we did have some staffing changes recently, and I hope what you will see soon, particularly in the last meeting, although we did do that calculation wrong. We just didn't add the numbers right, and that was where. But is that we have now a new staff person who's leading the budgeting process for us. And I have asked her, who is our executive director I think we have to find a better title for her, but executive director of special initiatives. So she is very well versed in the budget because she's been with our with the district for many years. And she's working with several key staff within our budget and finance and accounting departments. And it's essential. I've created a essential, like, SWAT team, and that's all they do. They're coming together every day, all day, to just focus on this. And so we do firmly believe, and so I just want to also mention it's $1.2 billion. And right at this moment in time, our CDE advisor is requiring us to go through each and every resource code because there were concerns that we were not fully monitoring each and every resource code in the past. And so they're requiring us to do that. And so the turnaround is it just takes a little bit more time. Once again, to have enough funding to make $1.2 billion means a lot of different resources. And within those resources, there's lots of restrictions. I do feel our staff has literally been working around the clock for the last 2 weeks. And we are very close, which is why I feel confident that we will be able to meet the deadline of getting schools their budgets in time for your school site council conversations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, so I'm going to go ahead and close us out. I want to just thank you again for being here, Superintendent Sue, and for, again, letting us grill you a bit, and more to come, because there, again, you saw that chat was popping. So so we'll definitely, like Meredith said in the chat, we will capture all of these, we'll download them, and we'll send it over and get responses. I want to thank you all, parents, for being here today and being engaged. As I said earlier, we have so many different places for you to plug in. We're constantly working on making SFUSD a better and ideal place for our students, for all of our students. And we cannot do that without you. And I know that we can achieve the things that we want to achieve with parent power. So, if you feel like, email hello@sfparents.org to get involved, to find out other ways that you can get involved and more involved, because it definitely will take everyone, and we've got lots of opportunities to empower you to do that. So thank you again for being here today, and I hope that you all have a good rest of your week.